Dr. Fauci, I believe you have testified that you didn't give any money to the Wuhan lab to conduct gain-of-function research. Is that right?
That is correct.
How do you know they didn't lie to you?
Excuse me, sir?
How do you know they didn't lie to you and use the money for gain-of-function research anyway?
Well, we've seen the results of the experiments that were done and that were published, and that the viruses that they studied are on public databases now. So none of that was gain of function. So
How do you know they didn't do the research and not put it on their website?
there's no way of guaranteeing that, but in our experience with grantees, including Chinese grantees, which we've had interactions with for a very long period of time, they're very competent, trustworthy scientists. I'm not talking about anything else in China. I'm talking about the scientists, that you would expect that they would abide by the conditions of the grant, which they've done for the years that we've had interactions.
So you don't think the Chinese would lie to you?
Well, when you say the Chinese are a rather broad group. I know the scientists that we've dealt with have been trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. You think all the scientists have told the truth in terms of the origin of the Wuhan virus and not been influenced by the Communist Party of China, do you?
I don't have enough insight into the Communist Party in China to know the interactions between them and the scientists, sir.
Right. Why are we giving them money in the first place?
Well, that's a very good question, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer it. Well, SARS-CoV-1 started in China, in Guangdong province, and it went from a bat to a civet cat to a human.
Yes, and excuse me, Doc, for interrupting you, but our time is so limited.
No, I'm going to be real quick.
Our time is so limited. Why are we giving money to the labs in China to study virology?
Well, I'm going to give you a rather succinct answer to that, sir.
I appreciate that.
And that's why I was saying the SARS-CoV-1, clearly the bats that have the viruses, that are the coronaviruses, are in China. As I said a couple of times, it's not in Fairfax County, Virginia, or is it in New York? It's in China. So if you want to show and study, importantly, the animal-human interface.
Because that's where the bats are.
Yeah, the bats.
Okay.
That's where the bats are.
I want to be sure I understand your testimony. You didn't give money to the Wuhan lab to do gain-of-function research.
That is correct.
And you believe they didn't do gain-of-function research because they told you they didn't.
We've seen the results of the studies that they conducted, and they were not
including any private studies.
Excuse me? Including?
Any private studies.
I'm not sure what you're getting at, sir.
Here's what I'm getting at. You gave them money and you said, don't do gain-of-function research.
Correct.
And they said, we won't.
Correct.
And you have no way of knowing whether they did or not, except you trust them. Is that right?
Well, we generally always trust the grantee to do what they say, and you look at the results.
Have you ever had a grantee lie to you?
I cannot guarantee that a grantee has not lied to us, because you never know.
Yeah. Can we agree that if you took President Xi Jinping and turned him upside down and shook him, the World Health Organization would fall out of his pocket?
I don't think I can answer that question, sir. I'm sorry.
Well, do you think that the President Xi Jinping has undue influence over the World Health Organization, do you?
I have no way of knowing the influence of the president of China over the WHO.
Okay, so you think the WHO is a completely independent body, level playing field, call it like you see it, and they really want to get to the bottom of the origin of the virus. Do you believe that?
My interaction with the WHO and for Dr. Tedros, the Director General, has been one that I do believe he's a person of high degree of integrity.
I want to ask one last question. Why did you guys spike, not guys and ladies, why did y'all spike the prior administration's investigation into the origins of the coronavirus and whether it could have come out of the Wuhan lab?
Sir, we did not spike anything in the prior administration. I'm not sure what you mean by spike, but we have no influence.
The State Department spiked the prior administration's study.
But that has nothing to do with the National Institutes of
So
Health.
they didn't consult with y'all?
They did not.
Did they consult with you, Dr. Collins?
I read about it in the press this morning.
Doc? They just spiked it without talking to their experts? You don't want to answer that one, do you?
I just read about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've all been to pandemic school for the last several years, and I want to use the few minutes I have to explore what we have learned. Dr. Fauci, whether you asked for it or not, you've sort of been the government's face on a response to the pandemic. Looking back, and I recognize that hindsight is crystal clear, but looking back, do you think it was worth it? Do you think the benefits were greater than the costs of closing down our elementary and secondary schools?
I think that's very difficult to give a definitive answer to that. I know in the very beginning, when we had really no other protection prior to vaccinations that were available to contain somewhat the spread of the virus, one of the things that was felt to be important would be to protect children as well as the rest of the population. Right now, we have felt more than just recently that it's very important to keep the children in school for the simple reason that we know of the deleterious effects, both psychologically, mentally, and developmentally in children, to keep them out of school. But you have to have a delicate balance between protecting the children from getting infected and perhaps
Did
bringing
we strike the proper balance?
You know, I believe that we have. It's very tough to tell. I think only time will tell whether that's the case, because there is indication that has been deleterious effects on children. But we believe from a public health standpoint that at the time it was the right decision.
Well, can I ask you this, Doctor? And I realize I'm not saying or offering a judgment on what was done at the time. I'm asking what we've learned. Let's suppose we had a substantial increase in prevalence of the coronavirus next week, God forbid.
Right.
Would CDC recommend shutting down the elementary and secondary schools?
It's very difficult for me to speak for the CDC, but knowing the fact that
Would you recommend it?
right now, I would do everything we can to keep the children in school and not shut down the school. And that has always been my strong recommendation, to the extent possible, not to keep the children out of school,
But yet we
but
did
to
shut
keep
down.
them but to keep them safely in school by getting children that are available to be vaccinated, to get the children who are eligible to be boosted, vaccinated, and to surround the children with teachers and personnel in the school who are vaccinated. That is the best way to protect the children while keeping them in school.
Okay. Let me ask you this. In hindsight, knowing what you know now, had you known it then, did we do the right thing in shutting down society? Would we have been better off saying, no, we're going to protect the vulnerable, the elderly, the people who are immunocompromised, and we're going to isolate them, but have the rest of American society, churches, businesses, universities, schools, go on about their business, while at the same time providing them guidance about how to protect themselves?
Well, it's a complicated question. I'll try and give as simple an answer as possible. I think there's a misperception about who the vulnerable are. there are many, many more vulnerables in society, and there's a misperception that the only
Yes, sir,
vulnerables.
but I'm about to run out of time. Let's assume that we can agree on a definition.
I don't think you can. I think that society is very heterogeneous, and it isn't a question of shutting down completely, Senator, because we never shut down completely. If you do shut down a society, you do it for a purpose. And the purpose is at that period of time when you're protecting people from interaction, that you get as many people vaccinated as you possibly can.
Let me stop
To
you,
shut
Doctor.
down.
I'm going to run out of time. Let me ask you one last
Sure.
question. What would you do differently today?
Right now, I would hope that we would get many more people vaccinated.
No, but what would you do when you did it in hindsight if you knew then what you know today?
It depends on when we got the vaccine. Do you mean before the availability of vaccine? Before the ability of vaccine, when we had no other situation, I would try to protect people by making sure that they masked and they kept themselves separated from this congregate indoor settings. That's what I would do in the absence of a vaccine. But right now, I think it's important looking forward. We still only have 66% of the total population vaccinated, and less than half of those are boosted. I think we can approach what we are likely going to be seeing now with an increase in surges, with the possibility of a surge in the fall and winter. One of the real things we can all do as a nation is pull together and try to get our people vaccinated, and those who are eligible to be boosted. That would solve a lot of the problems that you're referring to.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did the Biden administration ask any of you whether it was safe to rescind Title 42?
We've had no discussions about that, sir.
You haven't, Dr.
I have
How
not, no.
about you, Dr. Fauci?
No, I have not.
How about you, Dr. Gibbons?
No, sir.
How about you, Dr. Gordon?
No.
Dr. Hodes?
No, sir.
Dr. Volkow? Well, the Biden administration says it's safe, that under the science, it's okay. Who did the administration rely on that to suggest that rescinding Title 42 is in the interest of public safety?
That was a CDC decision. The Title 42 is a CDC decision.
Do you agree with it, Dr. Fauci?
Well, I think that the immigration policy should be separated from the public
and I
health.
don't want to get you involved in immigration policy, but people are people. Physiology is physiology.
Right.
And one's susceptibility to the virus has nothing to do
Right.
with their country of origin or their immigration status.
Right.
And what I'm asking you, purely from a public safety standpoint, is it safe to rescind Title 42?
Yeah, I think given the level of infection at the time, which is right now, that I think that the CDC decision was a reasonable decision.
Does anybody disagree with that? Do you all agree with that? Let me get you a record. Dr. Gibbons?
Yes.
I concur with Dr. Fauci on that.
Dr. Gordon?
I don't have the expertise to concur or not concur.
Okay. Dr. Hodes?
I would also say I don't have the expertise to weigh in on this.
Dr. Volkow?
I don't have the expertise.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Director, thank you for being here today. I know how busy you are. I've been in my office listening to some of the testimony of both of you, and I'm a little uncertain about some of the answers, which is probably a shortcoming on my part. Madam Director, could you in 1 minute summarize for me what the recommendations are today from your agency about wearing masks?
Absolutely. First of all, can I just say thank you for your YouTube video for promoting vaccines, which I just adored.
Did you like my singing?
Yeah, I did. Thank you very much for doing
You're under oath now, remember.
Yes, I did. Even so, I did.
Thank you for that.
Last Thursday, we released guidance that demonstrated for an individual who is fully vaccinated and not immunocompromised, that they are able to safely unmask, with the exceptions, certain exceptions, of course, in travel corridors, healthcare settings, that if you are an individual, you can safely unmask if you're fully vaccinated.
Inside and outside?
Inside and outside.
Okay. What role do the state regulations play with respect to that?
We are working now to update all areas of guidance, but here's what is really, I think, important to understand. We are not a homogeneous United States. We have counties that have less than 20% vaccination.
Yes, ma'am, but I don't want to get too off the question here. If I walk over to the House of Representatives, do I have to wear a mask?
Those are locally driven policies, but we felt that it was important for the science for us to convey the science of what is safe for individuals.
Well, I'm trying to understand the CDC recommendations, and I appreciate it. Based on CDC recommendations, if I walk over to the House, are you recommending I wear a mask?
If you are by yourself walking over to the House and you're fully vaccinated?
No, ma'am, once I'm over there. I'm vaccinated. Once I'm over there and I'm talking to some of my colleagues.
We have really encouraged that the policies of mask wearing be locally driven, and the reason for that is because every community, every county has different rates of disease and different rates of vaccination, and that's really
what's different about the House? Do you know?
I don't know the rate of vaccination around the Capitol nor the rate of disease around the Capitol off the top of my head.
Okay. What about airplanes?
What is the policy on airplanes? The policy on airplanes is to wear a mask.
Okay. And why is it different on an airplane as opposed to a restaurant?
So the CDC provides guidance for what is safe to do. The federal policy is obviously an interagency policy that we need to look at across different agencies. What I will say, though, is that there's very little choice when you board an airplane as to who's going to be sitting next to you, who's around you. And also, airplanes may be a place where we have more variance because of the travel from international places.
Okay. Last question. What, in your opinion, was the origin of the virus?
This has been studied by the WHO.
Ma'am, I'm asking your opinion.
I don't believe I've seen enough data, individual data, for me to be able to comment on that.
What are the possibilities?
Certainly the possibilities of that most coronaviruses that we know of are of origin from that have infected the population, SARS-CoV-1, MERS, generally come from an animal origin. And
are there any other possibilities?
Certainly a lab-based origin is one possibility.
Okay. Is the United States funding gain-of-function research?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Can you get an answer to that for me and let us know, let the committee know?
Dr. Fauci would be the one who knows best, and he testified last week.
Dr. Fauci seems confused. I'm asking, with all due respect, I'm asking you to get us that information. Where throughout the world, including but not limited to the United States of America, are we doing research on these viruses to make them contagious in order to study them? That's what I mean by gain of function.
I understand. We certainly can have our staff look into this. I don't know that we have the access of labs across the world, just the ones that are funded here in the
United States. But you're the head of CDC. I bet if I bet that you get your phone calls returned.
Okay.
Would you get us that information?
I'd be happy to give you the information to the best of my ability.
Okay. And I'm going to do a complete album of my singing. I'll send you a courtesy.
Will you sign up, please?
Sure. Thank you. thank you both for being here. Thank you, Madam Chair.